done individually by the members. I will start. Jeff Sims, Environmental Protection Commission Chair.
Jay Collins, Planning Commission staff.
John Scott, City of Tampa Transportation.
Van Cadwarico, Public Works, Ventura County.
Chris Colorhoff with Community and Infrastructure Planning for Hillsborough County.
Sarah Grimmick, Children's Services, Hillsborough County.
Richard Perez, Development Services here for Michael Williams.
Hi, everybody. Sierra LaFleur, Hillsborough County Aviation Authority.
Hey, Omar Pirzada with Hart.
Danny Collins with the Planning Commission staff.
Elizabeth Watkins, TPO staff, and Chair online, you have members Ron Patel from the City of Temple Terrace, Lama Al-Basif, also from Community Infrastructure Planning, and Frank Kugenhauer from Plant City online.
Okay, great.
And you have a forum.
All right, very good. Looks like we got a lot of people pinch hitting today, so we appreciate you all for stepping in. We do have the quorum. Next up is public comment. Do we have anybody from the public wishing to speak today? Seeing none and hearing none, we will move on to the approval of the April minutes that were included with the packet. Does anybody have a discussion or comments on the minutes? Can I get a motion for approval?
Jay Collins, motion to approve.
Second,
Second.
Ben Cobb with the second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Very good. Unanimous. And we are up to action item number 1, Manhattan Avenue Vision Plan.
Here, you're from there. Okay, to share here. Share, but it's asking. Okay.
Good afternoon. May the 4th be with you. Lisa Silva, TPS staff. I see my City of Tampa stakeholders, but I see many of the stakeholders that helped put this project together. So this will be fun to present it to you guys. I'm the project manager. We had a consultant, and so Catherine Tellez and Fair Pierce was our consultants on it. So this started more than a year ago, like close to like a year and a half ago. It's another one of our safety corridor studies. This one's distinct and different than the one I did last month, though. This was like, think big picture and concepts. This is a vision plan, and it's a pretty Herculean effort because it's 4 miles long and it traverses 3 different jurisdictions. So it was a fun little challenge to put it together. So it is Manhattan and Henderson, from Kennedy all the way down to Gandy. So a portion of it, Kennedy to Del Mabry, is the Department of Transportation's owned and maintained. And then there's a segment of city owned and maintained, and then a portion of the county. So county members and CAP's team participated in this, and then we also reflected their safe routes, safe streets for all work that they were doing is also reflected in the final of this. So that's the overall, and again, vision. So first we have to start with all the data and existing conditions. So we did speed counts, traffic counts, the level of service analysis. Of course, everything bakes in the community engagement, field audits, and then developing the recommendations. As I mentioned, it's a big corridor with a lot in it. And so the attached report to your agenda item is what you're going to be acting on. But I'm going to hit the highlights in this very brief overview. So a lot going on this corridor, and why we tackled it, because like there's the sidewalks sometimes are where the cars are parked. I mean, it's like the right of way is very constrained, got non-conforming uses out there. Changes in contacts, very old, development is on there, lack of travel lanes, et cetera. So a lot going on, a lot of utility conflicts, lighting, parking, et cetera. As I mentioned, many of the stakeholders are in the room are tuned in. So we had representatives from each of the 3 jurisdictions, and then some of our vulnerable user representatives and advocacy groups. So we have discovered 5 schools along and adjacent to the corridor. So sidewalk stoppers provided a lot of great local specific contacts to our investigations, and Walk by Tampa was solicited and participated in some of that information too. We went out on a 2-day road safety audit of the entire corridor. So got our steps in for sure, and a little bit of sun tan or burn, depending on your situation. Drug a wagon the entire corridor. So poor Tara had to like go out and around many blocks in some places because we just could not get there with the wagon safely. Saw a lot of different mobility devices out and along the corridor. A lot of those school-age children trying to traverse and cut across the corridor. We even went out and did a nighttime audit and evaluated the lighting for it. And we got to work with our stakeholders and developed alternatives. And so we had a bike-focused alternative, a pedestrian-focused alternative, and then kind of a hybrid focus. Took that to the public as well and sought their feedback. So we did a variety of feedback methods, including a charrette, where we rolled out all the plots in the room, had different stations that provide interactive input, reflected all of that same type of solicitation and feedback on online survey and roll plot, like an interactive map that was just like the maps they saw in the room. Had a website and lots of people emailed. My inbox was full of comments. So those are all summarized in the public engagement technical memo that's part of the report. So we heard from the community that they would like slower speeds. They'd like all the modes, to be, that there's a lot of great slow streets adjacent and crossing this corridor, and a few existing facilities on the corridor, but not consistent ones. There's those 6-legged intersections. They're very challenging. They're challenging to turn left on in many parts of the day. They're confusing. And then, yes, okay. So a lot of variety there. Lots of you. Okay. I've got the time limit. Okay. So summary, some more charrette highlights. I kind of told some of them already. Okay. This is like making sure it covered everything. School, the sidewalk gaps, and bicycle facility limited right away. I didn't even be on the table. It's one of our stakeholders. Okay, so the report itself is broken into these 6 chapters. Going over the existing conditions and the background, and then the plan development. We detailed all that, had the decision points and the feedback, and the narratives of why everything's put together the way it is, and then the actual vision plan. This again is big picture, long range planning. It's going to be multi-steps. I'll hit some of those at the end. And then our design considerations, because this is, going to be then ready for the jurisdictions to take for implementation. The big long corridor, divided into 9 different segments. I'm going to hit some of the highlights, but every single map and cross section are in the final report. So here we're at the top of the corridor with Kennedy. So you've got the vision is to widen and add a median, allow for some access management, some mid-block crossings with some refuges. This type of alignment is at a couple different locations for that portion of the corridor. We've got some visionary ideas to have some 2-lane roundabouts evaluated for the corridor. Then with those medians, the dragway cuts that are impacted by right in, right out would be so impactful because it's a lovely, easy U-turn to use a roundabout, and the series of roundabouts would help address those speeding issues that we mentioned. And when a roundabout is not feasible or you wanted to pursue this different type of approach with those six-legged intersections, this one where you're like defining the areas better and having the little median refuges would be a safer, more efficient alternative. So and then some of the legs could be considered for closing altogether, not dissimilar to what we have here at Morrison already today. But then since Morrison is a lovely slow road and anticipated to be a lovely bike boulevard street, but it's difficult to cross this corridor, what we're proposing is a bike signal be added, and then that striping so that the bikes can go straight across, even though the drivers cannot. And that's consistent with the bike master plan. Some more adding crossings strategically along the corridor, because there are some long gaps where it's difficult to do that, and where there's like those destinations with the schools or special other special community things along there. And then those were consistent with like the roofs plan and different feedback from the city campus staff. Here, adding a raised median would cause issues for a lot of the people. So that a turn lane was proposed in this portion of the corridor. This south of Euclid already enjoys some on-street bike lanes, but are protected. So we're suggesting restriping the lanes to add a little bit of a buffer, and then add vertical separation where it's conceivable, because again, a lot of driveway cuts along this portion of the corridor. And then that awful situation where we have like parked cars, have people using the sidewalk as their drive aisle and stuff. This could be a midterm strategy, because like I said, this is a long range vision. So maybe adding some texture and some paint in those areas would bring more awareness that, hey, you pay attention, this is the pedestrian area. And then, okay, future considerations is where like all of the people can help us with that long range vision. And so I'm looking at my land use buddies around the table as well, because we're aware of City Campus doing their land development code update. It's looking at some corridor applications for the different things. So I'm in good consultation with those consultants, saying this corridor would be a lovely candidate to take the results of that and apply it. Because we have older non-conforming, layout and site plans that it's illegal to use the right of way for to use the right of way for. So as they redevelop, we need to be strategic about that and stuff. And then even just the right of way survey itself, I think it was dated 1941, so it's not very current and tied to the rules as well as our current ones are. So we have some of that to deal with. So lots of next steps. And then of course, additional analysis, maybe some road safety audits for those 5 schools, because we recognized their safety relationship to this corridor, but in and around the schools, especially some of those older neighborhoods, could use some extra attention. Lighting and landscaping plans, looking at the off-street parking requirements. We did notice some stormwater projects out there and some adjacent traffic projects, and we synthesized those. So as more of that happens, we would want to, bring that in as next steps as well. So it's an action item. I did present it to you in concept way back when we were doing the field analysis stage. So this is the adoption of the recommendations that are in the report. So we're asking that the TAC do that, recommending the board adopt this study.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Lisa. Do we have any comments or questions? Covered a lot of ground there.
4.1.
Did you do any any kind of assessment? I mean, I don't know the area that well, but I do know there's parts where some of the old businesses are up close to it, on whether some of these ones that call for expansion would have been impacting properties to the point of possibly having to relocate properties, like the right of way.
Some of the recommendations, would require right of way, you know, and property acquisition, but, we designed it within the existing right of way, most of
Okay.
it, you know, like the roundabout would not. It would, but
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, and certainly the roundabouts. I don't know. Do you have any idea why Henderson was built at a diagonal compared to every Taylor Road? Because it's one of the few in the county. It must have spent something back way when the city was being developed.
When you're when you're driving.
Yeah, but I think,
My life interesting.
but there are definitely some of those issues around Swan and Henderson, some of those multi-road, you know, 6 or even
Yeah.
possibly more, right? 1 or 2 spots.
Traffic signal timing and left turn phases were another, tool in the toolbox we're proposing.
Yeah, I think some of the proposition circles make a
Very
lot of sense.
constrained, yeah.
Curious.
So to
Okay, sorry.
properties goes onto the right of way. It's crazy.
Jake?
Lisa, it was a good presentation. How about localized flooding in the coastal high hazard area? How is the vision?
Like I said, with some of those existing stormwater projects that the city's already folded that, you know, looked at those and recognized those, but, this is the concept stage. When you get into design is when you have to design to accommodate any impacts to stormwater and stuff. We did work with our planning commission colleagues with the comprehensive plan update, so we were aware of like whether it's going to be designated transit, you know, multimodal. This one is a multimodal corridor, which happened to be what the name of our study is, a multimodal safety corridor analysis. So there's that kind of coordination. We know it's down there in the,
Yeah,
but we're not going to solve the flooding.
Oh, yeah,
here.
yeah, no,
We just
yeah.
develop standards will as it develops.
More of it, where any aha moments came out of it, you know?
Yes, when we had the charrette, they were closing the road to do the said stormwater improvement. I'm like, hey, that would have been nice to know before schedule my meeting.
And the follow-up doesn't relate to it, but during your public engagement, did you have any conversations with folks about the land uses on the corridor and basically what they saw happening to those land uses in the future?
Purposely avoided the land use conversation because my colleagues were having the same discussions at the same time. And I attended those meetings and saw they were contentious and stuff. Did meet with some of the elected officials down there, make sure we just collaborated and coordinated, but, we recognized the land uses were impacting it and they know that, you know, that is a very significant safety issue. So proposing to solve that.
Thank you.
Omar?
Yeah, I was gonna say one other thing from the local roadways committee, when you presented this, and I mentioned to call out the HART bus stops, which you did, so thank you for that. I also realized when I was looking at the map that one of those bus stops actually does have a bike rack as well. Not many of our bus stops have that, so that's also good. I was also gonna say, just like a consideration when you get to the design phase, sometimes we run into the issue with like kind of bike ped plans when you look at the bike lane and where the transit stop is. We've had issues where like you have the bike lane and then maybe you have like some like there's like flexible tubular
Yeah.
markers kind of posted and it blocks the bus stop. So I think for the visioning here, it's like not a big deal to not show that, but I think once you get down like more into the design phase, you want to kind of show that and, you know, just coordinate with us. when it
Yes,
comes to that. So,
definitely.
thank
Yes.
you.
And then you know why I said where appropriate, because like there's so many driveways, the bus stops, the crossings that, you know, may not get a lot of vertical,
Right.
but at least we got an additional distance and a second painted line is proposed and vertical where appropriate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add onto Jay's point regarding the land uses. So the land uses along Henderson is mostly CMU 35. So the adopted plan today has design guidance in the plan regarding making these areas more pedestrian friendly, more walkable. We did retain a lot of those concepts in the future land use update. Under, I think they're called the pedestrian oriented design standards now. So that I just wanted to point that out, that those standards are proposed to move forward, so.
I'll say that like, we did evaluate. And the community said, hey, how about some lane repurposing, but knowing the future land use categories and all that, we're like, yeah, it might make it right now, but with the growth that's anticipated in that intense land use category, not something that the stakeholders and the design team felt comfortable with the tools and use. So you won't see that division. Even though there are other big ideas.
Any other comments? One other minor one from me, just thinking about the area, this is just a comment, there is not much vegetation left when I think of Del Mabry and Henderson, even Kennedy. So some of the proposals with separated medians with some foliage in the center and trees, I think would be an improvement to the,
Yep.
to the area.
Right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a portion of the corridor does enjoy mature trees. And again, that area, we made sure we didn't propose anything too crazy that would impact those existing trees.
Right.
But that's part of why you see the proposed medians where appropriate, you know, where we could get those in so that we can enjoy and add those trees.
Okay, very good.
City standards allow the street trees.
Okay, no other comments? Can I get a motion? Can you slide to the last slide? Can you go to the last slide? For approval of the plan? Looking for a motion, but not all at once.
Jonathan Scott, motion to approve.
Motion to approve the plan and forward to the board. Can I get a second?
Second.
Danny with the second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, very good. Thank you. Next up is the FY 28 to 32 EPO priority list. Very lengthy list, as I noticed.
TAC Elizabeth Watkins, TPO staff. Before I get into the presentation, I wanted to just acknowledge that many people in this room helped develop the priority list, whether it was submitting applications, developing detailed engineering estimates. All that effort was appreciated. So the priority list, what is it? Essentially, it's just what it sounds like. It is a ranked list of projects that prioritizes different federal funding sources that are 5 years out. So many of the applications that were submitted are seeking funding for fiscal year 32. And that kind of goes into the calculus of when it makes sense to use these federal funds versus other revenue sources. But the priority list helps prioritize the set of pot of money that the TPO gets sub-allocated through federal law. The other thing that this list can do is it can communicate a need to FDOT facilities. Our partners in District 7 are awesome and always open to communications, but just having it on this list often helps because it's very much synced up to the work program process. And then finally, the last thing it can really do is document community support for projects. Our partners have done an amazing job going after those discretionary grants from DC, and they can point to this list that has been vetted through committees through the board and say, hey, give us those discretionary dollars. This project is supported and here's proof. So I mentioned early on, this is a all hands on deck effort. So we work very closely with our local agencies from the 4 local governments as well as HART. And the local agency's role in this process is they're the ones that are submitting applications. So all project ideas really do come from them because they're the ones that are going to have to build it, operate it, and maintain it. The TPO, we play a role in determining at a high level these priorities, setting a long-term vision, and then we use different data sources to sort of evaluate and estimate the type of performance that we could expect some of these projects to deliver. And then finally, FDOT also plays an important role. They're the ones actually programming the money, meaning like putting the dollars on a project. And with that great responsibility comes an important role of their of oversight of all these federally funded projects. I know this group knows this, but I want to just emphasize up front that not all transportation needs or projects are going to be in this list. There's only 40 projects on this list this year. It's really strategic on what goes on there. You know, I mentioned at the top of the presentation, this is for money usually 5 years out. So if you have an immediate need, you're not going to come to the TPO to fill that. So often the projects that we see that make a lot of sense for these funds are ones that can wait a little bit of time or maybe more expensive because it's more expensive because there's more requirements to deliver a federally funded project. But all that to say, this list of 40 does not have all the needs. Our partners, namely the cities, the county, and District 7, do an amazing job with their different CIP viewers that anybody could see kind of what's in that capital program. So there are a couple of things that have changed since last year. The first thing is that we're bringing this to the board and committees earlier. Historically, we've kind of lumped the priority list and the TIP together all in June. This year, we're being strategic and separating them because while they're related, they're two very different things. The priority list is suggesting projects for new funding, while the TIP is a recap of what is funded over the next 5 years. Another thing that has changed, we've updated the format a bit. So this is the same project, but looks a little bit different. We wanted to be able to provide just more information to committees, board, the public, to really get a sense of what this project is, what are those cost estimates, which is so important. Within the project phases, we also tried to identify a year in which the work was either complete or if it's coming up. And then to the left, we also tried to be clear about, okay, how much funding is actually being sought, what phase is being requested, and then what is the recommendation. And then the last piece of new information on here is we wanted to summarize project readiness. I know this group probably knows better than anybody, but just because you submit an application doesn't mean that the project is ready to go. Do you have a detailed scope? Do you have a detailed engineer's estimate and have all that coordination that is so necessary to all the work that we do? Has that all been complete? So we're trying this new format out, again, just to be to share more information and give people a sense of where this project is in its development. So now I'll get into the actual projects on the list. So this year, I mentioned there's only 40 projects. In past years, I think last year was 75. Prior to that, it was over 100. We're really trying to be strategic and clearly communicate which projects would benefit from being on this list because often they are federalized. So 31 of those projects are only seeking community support, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. But 9 of them are applications for existing projects that are seeking those sub-allocated funds in fiscal year 32. So just to give you a flavor of what those 31 projects are that are wanted to be on the list, but maybe they weren't seeking the TPO's discretionary funds, which I failed to mention. It's a relatively modest pot of funding, about $20 to $25 million per year. So some of those projects that didn't have applications but still had a purpose to be on the list were the TPO streetcar extension. The city is doing a fantastic job right now looking at the PD&E and kind of reimagining that project. Same with HART, with the Tampa Arterial BRT. That project is also kind of still in the PD&E phase. One of our TPO board priorities has been the widening of I-275 from Hillsborough to Bierce. That project is not funded. FDOT projects that maybe the design can begin in 10 or more years, but because it's a priority of the board, we keep it on the list. Hillsborough County also has an important priority of widening Van Dyke Road and adding the trail. That also remains unfunded for right-of-way construction. I think the remaining costs of that are maybe to the tune of like $100 million. And again, this pot of funding is only at best $25 million per year. So really to be on here to support it rather than to fund it, if that makes sense. For the projects that are, yeah.
We go back to the slide. What is that heavy maintenance facility?
Rushing through. The heavy maintenance facility is one of HART's long-standing priorities to I'll just try this with you. You go for it.
I can go for it, yeah. So the Hart Heavy Maintenance Facility, that's our bus garage, it's where all the maintenance is done. It's a very much an aging facility, so it's one of our priority projects to kind of upgrade that facility so we can, do better maintenance, store more buses, have larger capacity. Yeah, does that help answer it or?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Emma. So we're spending the rest of this presentation really laser focused on those 9 applications that were submitted for funding from our partners. You may recall that the TPO has 5 different investment programs, smart cities, anything related to like traffic signalization, turn lanes. What are those smaller scale improvements that we can do to have big impacts on congestion? Our state of good repair, keeping the existing assets that we have in good shape. Vision Zero, just projects with the core component of safety. Real choices when not driving, those are typically our trail projects. And then major projects for economic growth are often those widenings or realignments or fixed skyway transit. So smart cities is the TPO's #1 priority. So you'll see it's very high up on our list. And I'm really excited about this project coming from the county, where they're growing an existing program that they had that I believe that they won a federal grant for to update some of their hardware to help with the signalization. So it'll be on various corridors in East and West County. So Bloomingdale, Guayette, Fishhawk, Lumsden, Parsons, and then Racetrack Road out near Town and Country. The next priority for the TPO has been good repair and resilience, maintaining what we have. So we have a longstanding partnership with HART to help them with their various capital needs, such as bus stop capital improvements. HART has 2,500 stops across the county, and the TPO has supported HART in that and installing shelter, improving bus stop amenities, and any ADA upgrades that are needed. We are recommending that project to the tune of about $2 million to continue to support that. The vehicle replacements and midlife overhauls was the second request from HART. Over half, so 75 out of 130 buses are beyond its useful life. The HART team is doing a great job of squeezing every last mile out of these buses. You may have heard that they recently won a $30 million grant to replace those old diesel buses. But that's only going to be about 30 buses. So there's still more that need to be replaced to keep that fleet in good shape. So the recommendation for that project is $5 million to help HART continue to either do those midlife overhauls or replace the buses when it's time to do so. Then we had 2 bridge rehabilitation projects from the city of Tampa. One for Moraine to rehab the structures, electrical systems, and add sidewalks on both sides. The Moraine total project cost was about $21 million with a $15 million request, while CAS was a little bit lower. So staff is recommending that the CAS street get funded so we can continue to work down the line and fund a few more things. Because otherwise Moraine would kind of wouldn't even be able to be fully funded, but it would stop there as what can be funded. The next project is from Plant City for Vision Zero. Collins Street is an important thoroughfare that connects downtown Plant City to Midtown to local neighborhoods and commercial events. This project has been broken up into a few phases. So I think the first phase, Plant City intends to go to construction later this year. But the city is requesting design support for phase 3, which is from Also Brook to Alexander. So that is a request. We believe that there's enough in the pot to get funded. The next project is from the county to construct the Tampa Bypass Canal. This is the segment from about Risby Downs to Morris Bridge Road. It'll be starting PE next year. So if this got funded for construction, it would be a nice kind of continuation of continuing to build out our trail network. And the final 2 projects that I'll leave you with are one from the county, which is Gibsonson Drive widening from Fernhill Drive to US 301. It's intended to add 2 lanes to Gibsonton, add curb and gutter and sidewalks. This project actually submitted an application for something called the County Investment Grant Program, so it was state funds. So we think that this project will be successful in getting funded. The final project on the list is future phases of the Ashley Drive realignment and reconfiguration. This project is intended to reconfigure the street network to provide better access between downtown and Hillsborough River. An anticipated speed reduction as traffic transitions from I-275 into the downtown grid. Tampa, again, has done a great job with federal grant discretionary ones. So phase 1 is funded, but phase 2 and phase 3 remain unfunded. And the request was $10 million. But at this point, the money kind of runs out, so we don't believe that this project will be funded. So to wrap up, what those overall funding recommendations are looking like. The majority of the applications we received, we believe will be able to be funded given the pot of funding that's available. You can see investments in all modes, whether it's bike ped, transit, highways, bridges. It's a nice distribution in type as well as geographic, some in the cities, some in the unincorporated county. The last thing that it does is there's a really nice balance between construction and design. Let's get some things built and then let's get some other things in the pipeline so that they'll be ready in the future. So the recommended action before you today is to recommend that the TPO board accept this list, but I'm happy to answer any comments or questions that you may have.
All right, thanks, Elizabeth. Questions?
Question. Here, the numbers, you said numbers 31 through 40, right, are ones that are included but don't have funding. As of right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, those are typically like our major projects, so those big dollar amounts. So those are strategically near the bottom of the list because one project could wipe out the funding for like 5 years. Yeah,
Right. Right. So then will they get proposed at some point? Do they eventually move up in the priority list?
It's a great question. So they'll probably stay near that area, but their financing strategy often is bigger than what the TPO can offer. Yeah,
Okay.
they're going to go after those build grants, public-private partnerships, other funding sources. But we still wanted to give them an opportunity to make the list work for them. So they could go and point to it like, hey, this is still a priority of the community. And kind of, and the ranking matters less. It's more that they're on
On the
there.
list for those. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I don't have much of a comment except what you said at the end. I do like that it's covering the various buckets that you guys, try to distribute everything to. So I think that's a smart way to assess it. All right, hearing no comments or discussion, we're looking for a motion to recommend acceptance of the priority list to TPO board.
I'll be happy to make the motion that this committee recommend acceptance of the priority list to the TPO board.
All right, thank you, Chris. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sierra. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right, that was the last action item up. The next up is crash mitigation and congestion management process. CMCMP.
Good afternoon, TAC. This is Harry Walsh, TPO staff. Yes, I'm here to give an update on the crash mitigation and congestion management process, or CMCMP. Those of you who were at the February meeting with the TAC got the in-depth overview of what this is, but just to summarize, there is a required federal document called a congestion management process, or CMP. Any TPO or FPO that represents an area that has over 200,000 people, and of course, Hillsborough has over 1 million people, is required to look at its congestion and figure out ways to try to mitigate it. So we took that and we wanted to add safety aspects to it as well. And this is a process, so it's something that we're updating now, doing kind of a larger overhaul, and we're hoping to come back to it year after year and update some of the data, and maybe every several years do some substantial updates to the CMP. So today we only have a few slides, and then we're going to open up an ArcGIS experience, basically a web map that has a lot of data that we've collected, and take you through some of the layers that we've created. We're currently in the process of updating a technical memo and finalizing all the maps that we'll then bring to you in the June meeting, and we're going to ask for your vote for then to send that along to the TPO board. So with that, we've been working very diligently and working with Cambridge Systematics, and we have here Marty from Cambridge, who's been the project manager for Cambridge. I'm the project manager for the TPO here. And I'm going to turn it over to him for right now to go through some of the slides, and then we'll transition over to that map. And if you want any comments or questions that you have as we're going.
Thanks, Eddie. As Eddie mentioned, we have been working through the technical analysis, building on the high-level overview we presented in February. We are looking at from the CMCMP process from three fronts. One is on the congestion, which is related to mobility. The other is safety, and the final piece is on resilience. So we identified hotspots for each of these three aspects for this project. When we say hotspots for congestion, we look at multiple measures. If you remember, we identified several performance measures that can be used for tracking congestion. But we used these three that you see on the screen for identifying the hotspots. First is the percent of time congested. That means how much time during the day, or if you look at during the peak period, how much time is the roadway congested. And then vehicle hours of delay per mile, which shows the intensity. And then the planning time index, which shows how variable the traffic, the congestion is. These three components is what we looked at because the research shows that the congestion is mainly composed of 4 dimensions. One is the extent, that means how much. First is the time during congestion, so that is the first measure, percent of time. The second is how intense the congestion is. The delay measures that. The variability is measured by the planning time index. That means if I know in the middle of the night, and there's no traffic, it takes you 20 minutes. During the peak period, it may take 30 minutes. So that variability is measured by the planning time index. Put these all three together, you will be able to measure the extent of congestion. So what we did is we calculated each of these three measures, and then we combined them all together. And what you see on the map here, highlighted in red, are the hotspots as it relates to congestion. So that means any of these roadways have are congested from these three measures perspective. We will go through this a little bit more detail in the map, but that was the process that we employed. From a safety perspective, we looked at the safety data from Signal 4 from 2021 through 2025 for 5 years. And identified segments and intersections which are congested. For this purpose, what we did was we looked at all crashes. So all crash severities, fatalities, serious injuries, minor injuries, possible injuries, and property damage. These are the 5 crash categories that are available. The benefit of looking at all these crashes, let me take a step back. Many of the peer CMPs have looked at only the fatalities and serious injuries or a combination of them. We looked at all crash severities so that we look at this from a comprehensive perspective. And then we converted that using a equivalent weightage provided by the Federal Highway from safety analysis perspective, and identified the highest portions of these roadways which are from a safety perspective. Similarly, we did the same process for identifying the intersections as well. And what you see here on the map is the top 25 intersections from a safety perspective. Finally, from a resiliency, we looked at the process and the data that is included in the FDOT Resilience Action Plan. They look at mainly these 3 measures: storm surge, sea level rise, and floodplain map. It can be 100-year or 500-year. For the purposes of identifying from a resilience perspective, we look at any areas which are under the storm surge of 1 feet, sea level rise of 1 feet, and a 500-year floodplain. So this identifies the highest locations where which could be a chance of resilience congestion. Again, we will jump to the map in a few minutes. But what we are also looking at right now is a case study. When we put it all together, those three, from a congestion, safety, and resilience perspective, we identified a few corridors which we would want to dive into a little bit more in depth and identify what strategies could the TPO have done. The case study that we're going to look at is this Hillsborough Avenue from the 6th Street to Dale Mabry. So again, we've not completed the analysis. Oh,
Yeah, no, sorry, I just wanted to step in because I didn't say this yet. So the purpose of the CMCP is not really to identify specific projects. It's just to identify those hotspots that we were talking about before. And then it's up to the partner agencies, because we don't know the roadways or the signals or anything like that. It's the TPO. It's up to them to really figure out what their priorities are and develop the project. And so we just have in this scope one case study and then some general strategies that will apply to it as an example, so you can see how it would be used. And so that's what we're selecting here. There won't be like a list of projects generated from this. So the purpose of this exercise.
yeah, thanks, Andy. That is important. These strategies are at a very high level based on what the analysis. Again, for example, smart technologies, maybe you can chime in as well. Those are, I think, related to some of the potential projects that will be coming on this corridor. Signal timing and coordination strategies could improve the travel times along the corridors during peak times. Also, from a pedestrian crossing perspective, there were crashes related to pedestrians and overall at the intersections in this corridor. So there could be these strategies as a high-level idea that would be considered for this corridor.
Then let us, with that, feel free to ask any questions as you have them, but we will open up this map that we have. Zoom in a bit, make it a little easier to see.
I don't have a question, but I'd make the comment.
Absolutely.
To pick one to do a case study, you picked a winner because
It's good to hear.
Hillsborough, I would go all the way to I-4, frankly, but I-4 to Dale Mabry is just one of the worst I consider in the county, as far as all the different dynamics of things that are affecting that roadway, from pedestrians to bicycles to, I mean, everything you can think of, industry, residential, I mean, it crosses over everything. So I think that's a good one to do.
Absolutely. I just heard last week too that I believe City of Tampa or FDOT, City of Tampa, I think Hillsborough County working on a smart corridor pilot study that is targeting Hillsborough Avenue. So we'll learn a little bit more about that. I don't really have details of the extent or anything, but other folks have noticed as well. So I'm happy to hear that feedback. So here online, you can see this is just the overall CMCP network. We did have to select what that network was. So we only selected roadways that get consistent, reliable data year on year, and that were above 5,000 ADT, so 500 or 5,000 volume every day. And then I think we select that, so you can see it.
Yeah.
Okay, then before we get to hotspots, so some of the components that we had here that we mentioned is obviously congestion, and we have all of the components of that. So you could look at the percentage of time congested. You'll have that there with red being 51% or higher. The peak time is spent congested. Yellow is 16% or higher up to 50, and then the green is under 16%. So you can flip around and look at, so highly congested, you can look at mildly congested for time congestion. You can see mildly congested, a lot more red on the map there. There are the other aspects of the congestion like delay. So you look at the daily delay, same thing. Each of these has slightly different, like on the legend, you'll see that the scale changes a little bit, but we tried to do that green, yellow, red measure throughout this. And those are just some examples for congestion. We have the percent time congested, delay, speed, planning time index, like we're being talked about before. Same thing if we go to safety, we have crashes, both overall crashes, and then we've also looked at those crashes normalized per mile. So you can see some of the highlights there as well. See, and then after crashes, we have that resilience measure that we talked about. We can look at storm surge. We had a few different categories. We spent a lot of time iterating internally about which things to select. There we go. Let's load again. And then we also just have some general data that would be relevant, like, for example, we have the hard bus routes on here, we have trails, we have our truck routes, as well as our high injury network that was created outside of this effort, but obviously it's useful to compare this high injury network with what we're finding for the safety hotspots. So with all of that, you can break down by component. We also just have an overall hotspots measure here. So with this, Praveen, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. So the information that Harry went through provides all the in-depth analysis that we conducted, and you can look at the granular details for each measure as well. For this hotspots, as I talked about in the presentation, we identified locations. For example, this is the interactive map. You can zoom in and I can look at where these 25 hotspots intersections are. And then you can turn on, this is the safety related segments. And then from a hotspots perspective, this is the map for the congestion related hotspots. What I will do is that I'll just explain to you the way we identified, for example, the Hillsborough Avenue as a candidate for the case study. Is we looked at where both safety and congestion are identified, and as you see this corridor, all the way from Hillsborough Avenue is congested either from a congestion related perspective or a safety related perspective. We then drill down into some of the measures and we see that the underlying factors of reliability, safety, they're all high. So we looked at those, we identified that as a case study for this project. So this interactive web map provides you the flexibility to zoom in and see where these congestion hotspots are.
Yeah, and I just wanted to note too, you might think that the congestion hotspots and the safety hotspots would be distinct because when you're congested, you're moving slower, so there's probably fewer collisions, and likewise the other way. But you're not imagining it for Hillsborough Ave, there's both a lot of crashes and severe congestion, so that's something to look at. Same thing with I-4 as well.
Yeah. Well, before you go, okay, can you make the map a little bit bigger? I just thought it was kind of interesting, kind of along the lines of what you're saying, and slide to the right. It just is interesting to me that I look out to East County and see the two right there where your cursor is.
Yep. Right
those two hotspots that seem unrelated to congestion. And you would think there would be that connection. I mean, to me, those are outliers that should draw attention to saying what's going on at these intersections where there's not necessarily a lot of traffic, but we're still having enough to hit something doesn't seem right there. It could be a speed issue. I know there could be a lot of things. I mean, at that part of Highway 60, it's more desolate than, so it's just a little unusual to be, that might be Turkey Creek or 60.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's truck traffic out there, but again, it's not not Hillsborough Avenue, so you would think that traffic would find its way to move. So I guess, you're focused on congestion, which I totally get, but I think it's interesting kind of on the flip side, you can use it to have further questions come up. But anyway, sorry, Jay.
So this is interesting. I like anything that we can visualize. Congestion and delays are different things, but to a layman such as myself, they seem to be the same.
Sure.
And for delays, I thought it was interesting that you have like 2/3 of the county green, which would tell me there's no delay, yet the level of service for a lot of those roads is failed. So
And specific,
something's in there that works for y'all that doesn't work for me as a layman.
sure.
So a couple of things as I turn this on, I'll mention is that you're right. I think from a congestion, how do we define congestion is important as well. The historical research that we conducted, it's very difficult to explain congestion as just one dimension because different traveling public experience congestion different. So that's why I mentioned those 4 components of congestion. Number one is the intensity. How bad is it? That's measured by the delay. You can get stuck in traffic, there could be a huge, The norm was delay. You never get anywhere. Reliability is basically, one day you can get through from point A to point B in 10 minutes. The next day it may take you 30 minutes. That's variability. And then how much time during the day you're stuck in traffic. That's the percentage of time. So all of these have been proven to be various dimensions of congestion that needs to be looked at rather than just one aspect of it. For different purposes, different the need for looking at it. For example, reliability is vastly important to make sure that you're on time. That's not only important for us as commuters, but also from trucking perspective. That's vastly important for the business. So that's to your first question. To the second question, I think as I said, the devil is in the details. We went through a lot. Many of these measures we calculated at the entire day, looking at the entire day and averaging them out or combining them out. But also we look at the peak period because sometimes the congestion is predominantly during the peak period. And when we look at it, it's during the evening peak hours between 4 to 6 p.m. So, and then we normalized by mile as well. So when you look at this, while you're true that the majority of this looks clean, again, we can play around with the legend and how it will look like, but we need to look at the other aspects of congestion.
No, I think that was fair. Did that mostly address your question, Jay?
I think where I was just, my thing again is thinking about if the public interacts with it, how will the public take it to where when they're sitting there going, I'm traveling on Lumsden, I'm traveling on Bloomingdale, I'm traveling on Causeway, and I'm always delayed, yet this has it as green. So trying to understand, I guess, like you were saying, the ways in which you actually tabulate the data.
Yeah. This makes sense. And overall, what we're hoping is I'm showing you behind the curtain, because
Right.
obviously it's publicly available data, but really what we're hoping to focus on is this hotspot.
Right.
map. And
Yeah.
So it's basically anything that's part of here has met that threshold that is significantly congested. And that's probably going to address the majority. We are exactly what Jeff was saying before too. We're trying to do some spot checks on areas that we know there have been complaints about or people are aware of. And so hearing like, yeah, let's look at those 2 dots in East County, what's going on there. So, but generally, what we're trying to get is we want this hotspots to be kind of the takeaway, that's the thing to use to discuss, and then everything else is more just one ingredient you threw into the pot together.
Sure.
So,
Okay, thank you.
right. Are there any other comments or questions?
Doesn't appear to be so. Going once, going twice. Okay, well, we appreciate the presentation. This is not an action item, so I guess that finishes it. Thank you very much.
Thank you all, appreciate it.
All right, next up is the roadways resiliency countermeasure. Here's all the time.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Matt Pleasant. I'm planning manager with Applied Sciences. We've been helping the TPO staff with the local roadway resilience countermeasures project for the last couple of months here. I'm here to give the status updates and the project overview. So project overview, the local roadway resilience countermeasures project identifies strategies to mitigate flooding and heat impacts on roadways and roadway users and assess their feasibility. So we've been through a couple of steps, starting late last fall, we went through this corridor selection process, and this was to identify a set of 3 corridors that were very representative of the threats that we face here in Hillsborough County specifically. So that's tidal flooding, inland flooding, and heat. And we're going to zoom into each of those areas very briefly in a later presentation, talk more about the specific roads. And we brought this to a technical stakeholder committee, and just to use that as like sort of a jumping off point to talk about some of the challenges they're facing, how they're already trying to approach those. And that was made up of planning, engineering, and emergency management staff of the county and city of Tampa, in Tampa International Airport. And then we moved into strategy development. So drawing from a pretty broad toolkit of floodplain management, urban design, transportation planning, landscape architecture, to come up with a practical set of strategies that we can consider local governments can consider folding into a roadway improvement project. And really the ultimate guide of the project is to, the ultimate goal is to put this guidebook that is planner focused, planner facing, and also practitioner facing, but also for the public to kind of use as a starting point for how to implement some of these things. So I want to talk about a little bit about why we care about this. Tidal flooding, rainfall flooding, and heat impact our travel decisions every day. Really kind of depends on the time of the year too, but tidal flooding you see here, our rainfall flooding. See here on the picture on the left, this is a car trying to navigate some flooding during Hurricane Demi 2024 in the True Park area, is trying to turn onto Gale Mabry and just sort of proceeding through that flooding. I think we've all tried to make that calculated decision before during flooding events. And then we've already set a record this year for the earliest calendar day of 90-degree weather. And we did that in March. Last year, we hit our first reported day of 100-degree weather in Tampa. So this has a huge impact on just people trying to use their roadways, but also the infrastructure itself. So flooding is going to sort of impact it from the surface, but also the subsurface again, especially those tidal areas impact the subsurface layers to sort of create a structural issue for the roadway. And flooding and heat to sort of age the roadway accelerates that aging process. It's already happening, so it can shorten the lifespan of the infrastructure itself. So the countermeasures that we're talking about are meant to be practical, near-term things that can be implemented. Hopefully affordable too. Like to talk about that and within the guidebook and put that into context, as well as what you can actually expect in terms of the actual improvement. Things. We have some pretty tough areas of flooding in the county, so we want to be realistic about what you can achieve with these near-term solutions, but also kind of give the broader array of those higher costings that you can do if you decide to make the investment. So here's some real world examples. Here on the left is a picture from Miami Beach. This is the Sunset Harbor neighborhood. It's the lowest point in Miami Beach. The top photo is from 2011. That's the picture of what sunny day flooding looks like in this area. That's when the level of the tide is higher than the roadway itself. So you get tide actually backflowing through the stormwater connections into the street. It creates, you see there. 2015, they made the decision to elevate the roadway by 2.5 feet to 3 feet. And so it solved that sunny day flooding issue, but you can see it kind of created some other impacts there. It's a little difficult to see, but the kind of commercial storefront space sits lower than the roadway now, which is an ideal space. So they came in and actually installed some stormwater pumps to pump that area out. So it's kind of a complicated, very high cost solution. In the middle is what the city of Philadelphia refers to as a stormwater bump out. It's what we frequently call just a curb extension that's sort of excavated out. It's designed to intercept that stormwater before it reaches the broader stormwater management system. There's different levels of engineering that can go into those. For this one, I'm not sure, but it can be installed with an under drain, so it kind of filters through. That topsoil is actually providing a little bit of water quality. That filter process is improving water quality before it actually then filters down and exfiltrates into the stormwater management system, or it might just be percolating. So and that has a little bit of impact on the cost, of course. And then pool pavements. These are a couple of pictures from the city of Phoenix. What this is actually just a surface coating on the roadway that they apply, and they mix it with like a roadway preservation material. And so it is actually just a reflective coating. It really shoots that heat back out rather than allowing that asphalt to absorb that. And so the benefit there during the day is actually more just to like the premature aging of the roadway. It's less so for air temperature, which you would want to see. That actually happens more at night, as I understand it. This is still being researched pretty heavily. That roadway isn't slowly releasing the heat overnight, so nighttime temperatures are benefited in that way. So, and now I'll talk about the corridors that we selected. It'll be sort of case studies that we talk about and then the plan. This is Danish Shores Drive. This was selected for tidal and rainfall flooding impacts. This is in town and country. It's identified in the Tampa Vulnerability Assessment, 2025. It's actually a county maintained road, connects from Memorial Highway over to George Road. And it sort of wraps around the Rocky Point Golf Course. This is actually the jurisdictional line of the city. So the golf course itself is in the city. Everything to the west and to the south is county, and those canal neighborhoods those roads are maintained by the county as well. It's also representative of a very specific kind of development pattern in Florida. This is a picture on the left of what Danish Shores Drive looked like in 1938. They will tell you that they are one of the oldest golf courses in the state, if not the oldest. You can kind of see it's been there for quite a while. Just how that development has kind of grown up around the golf course. Sometime in the late 1950s is when those canal neighborhoods were dredged. The dredge material was to create the canals, the neighborhood itself. This is what the floodplain modeling looks like for Danish Shores. And it's been validated by actual storm events. So during Hurricane Debby, it looked a lot like this. The road was shut down. What that yellow box, those arrows are indicating are two very specific areas of vulnerability. So what's happening here, just short story, is water is sheet flowing over Memorial Highway and going into the golf course. As well as that lower portion there. And it's trying to get out from culverts into the Sweetwater Creek there to the west and into the canals. It can't quite do that. It's just overpassing. So it results in what you see there. And the lower rectangle, that's highlighting a very low portion. Right? It's about 3.5 feet in that area, which is just extremely low. And it kind of collects there. So when we brought this to our technical stakeholder group, they're very aware of the issues here. The county's looked at this area, they're trying to make some kind of improvement. And something that, we did bring up roadway elevation with them. And something they told us was, that has come up before in other areas. And so most of the time it's not feasible for the stakeholder set. Because we require land to hold the water that you're displacing. So if you go in and elevate the road you're creating, you have to take that floodplain and put it somewhere. And so if it's physically constrained like this, where do you put it? Maybe the golf course, I don't know. We haven't, really kind of broached that as part of this project. It's come up in conversation, but it's kind of a bigger conversation that the city would need to have, the sports authority. And also they're just trade-offs no matter what you do. It's very hard to solve for these very low-lying coastal areas. Second is South 78th. This is the Progress Village area. If you're familiar, this was a chip stand there to the west. And we looked at Eagle Palm Drive down to Riverview Drive. And just based on existing floodplain mapping, this looked like, an area that has a lot of challenges. You can really, as far as rainfall flooding go, there are a lot of areas. So we're looking for some geographic diversity here, something in South County to focus on as an example. And it's really representative of that more sort of rural typology with areas that are reliant on roadside swales here. So you can see there that the picture of the lower left is what that looks like. It's just kind of a very simple sort of stormwater sheet going right off the shoulder into the swale there. And then just to the east is the creek with a very kind of much higher level of engineering going on there, sort of like stormwater is concerned, consistent with ponds and outfalls. This is what the floodplain mapping looks like. It's a series of different floodplains, the annual 10-year and the 25-year floodplains. So we talked a lot about the 100-year. This is what these recurrence intervals look like. And the problem area, this was confirmed by some people we talked about to out in the area, is this area right around Eagle Palm Drive. So the noticeable dip there becomes kind of a challenge during rainfall events. 78th kind of relies on Archie Creek, which runs east and west through this area to drain. So those swales eventually try to get to Archie Creek, and then those higher volume rainfall events, it just kind of gets gets overpowered basically. The wider area also eventually, these stormwater ponds, those all eventually lead to Archie Creek. So this is just a very critical kind of artery for drainage in the area. And bringing this to the stakeholder committee, it was kind of, it's interesting, they had, went through this kind of discussion a little bit about like level of service, like what can we do? And is this an area that we need to spend our time on, or is there other areas that perhaps where their flooding is even more severe? And the challenge is in creating solutions that will get them to the level of service that they want to see. They might be able to come in and kind of make an improvement that would get them to that 10-year, improve that 10-year storm kind of scenario, but they aim for that 25-year, they come in and make that improvement. Might give the impression that they've kind of solved all their problems and they really have. So this is a comment from one of our stakeholders. Is it better to spend the money where you can eliminate their flooding or achieve 5-year level of service, which is what we constantly do? And then lastly, North Boulevard. This is identified in the Tampa Heat playbook as a very high heat vulnerable area. They're ranked high for a couple of reasons. There's a multitude of factors that they took into account. It's minimal tree canopy, high land surface temperatures, limited access to cooling centers. So for the purpose of this project, we broke it into 2 different areas here, looking just north of 275 and the 7-3 blocks south of 275. This is a little bit how we kind of are approaching kind of the analysis for this roadway. It's looking at the available right of way, how much is paved, how much is vegetated. And then as far as tree canopy, one of the big things is just we're going to constraints as well. So the presence of power lines is going to kind of look at that. And then also just doing kind of a space inventory. What are those ground conditions? On the left, you have an area right outside of Lake High School where there's trees there, and they don't look so healthy. That could just be because we're in a drought right now, but also could be something, maybe soil compaction, or maybe just soil itself isn't really supporting that. So you think you want to have you would expect a better tree growth there, but it's not. You're not seeing that. And then areas like this right across the street, because it's kind of Pork Chop Island, and it's kind of like an opportunity to strip out some of those impervious surfaces that contribute to heat and help the area down. So the next step is just assembling some of this information into the guidebook. We want it to be well illustrated and realistic about what you can achieve and apply that to our corridors, and then we can bring that back to you guys in June for action. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Do you have any questions or comments? None.
I just think this is really important. What you're doing, and to have a guidebook like this when there's some really vulnerable areas around here is can be really important when projects are being proposed.
No comments? That was only really what I would say. This is an important topic. I mean, I like forgetting it's not. I think this is one that can be kind of backburnered sometimes, and when it comes to transportation stuff. So I'm glad it's continuing to be talked about, and we're going to continue to be affected. As more roads are developed and more of the urbanization is continuing to happen. It's going to affect the roadways and everything else. So again, I like hearing the report. All right, I guess that's it. Thank you very much. It was a pleasant presentation. So, all right, last up is the FY 2731 introduction to TIP.
Good afternoon, TC. I know it's been a long meeting, so I will get through this as efficiently as possible. All right, so I'm going to present to you today just some of the highlights from the proposed transportation improvement program that will come to you in June. Again, what makes the TIP different is it is a list of federally funded and regionally significant projects that have program funding over the next 5 years. The TPO is required to do this by federal and state statutes, and it really serves the purpose of bringing added visibility to these important projects. So a couple things that we're required by federal law to do, we have to make sure, number one, that the public has an opportunity to see what projects are in there, give comments. So we take that responsibility very seriously. We coordinate with all of our agencies, but we're specifically required in law to work closely with DOT and HART, as they are the ones that are often the direct recipients of a lot of these federal funds, highway to DOT, transit to HART. All the projects must be consistent with our long-range transportation plan. And again, the priority list is the wish list. The tip is not. The tip is what is funded and what's coming down the pipeline. So I'm gonna go ahead and get into it. This year's tip, again, it's over 5 years. So it represents 179 projects with over $2.5 billion of investments. The vast majority of that kind of goes to our traditional highway program, even though that is a broader category because it's not just highway widening. It's safety projects, bike walk, signal, lots of different projects are kind of bundled under there. 280 million over that 5 years for transit, 164 million in state and federal funds for the port, and about 89 million in state and federal funds for the airport. So at a high level, we'd like to summarize what that project distribution is across all of our investment categories. So you'll see in this bar chart, the vast majority of projects in this program are for state of good repair and resilience. And that always makes a lot of sense to me because we have to maintain what we have. When you slice and dice it by the dollars, you'll see for that 2.5 billion, about half of it goes to those major projects, those widenings, those interchange improvements. And that's really because those projects have higher dollar values. So you'll see them take up much more of the pie when you're looking at it from a funding perspective, but there are fewer projects because again, they are so expensive. Then when you slice and dice it by just those TPO funds, so that $20 to $25 million that I spoke about earlier with the priority list, there's about $90 million reflected here. You can see kind of more of a distribution between the safety projects, good repair and resilience, and then trail projects is one thing that often gets funded with those dollars. Now I'll just give you a few highlights. And again, there's like 180 projects. I don't want to just shout a bunch of project names at you. So this year I tried something a little bit different to highlight the projects that are going to be in construction next year. I thought the timing of that might be something that you're interested in, but open to your feedback if there are other ways you'd like me to slice and dice this information for the June meeting. So there are a few major projects, West Shore Interchange, over $500 million to reconfigure that important project. That is underway right now. Phase 1A is under construction. Future phases are planned for 2030 and 2032. It's going to be a bear, but it's going to be great once the project is complete. The Turnpike is also continuing to work towards the Suncoast Parkway widening. The Van Dyke from Loose Lake Fern is planned to start construction in fiscal year 31. And as you may recall, DOT has a moving forward project to add an express lane on I-4, 1 lane in each direction from I-75 to Polk Parkway. They are moving at light speed and they intend to start construction in fiscal year 28. So these are the projects I'm going to talk about that are going to be in construction next year, broken out by the jurisdiction. So the first one, these are all City of Tampa projects. And these are projects that are planned to support the proposed Rays Stadium development. Many of these are still to be scoped out because ongoing discussions about that site, if that will even happen. But DOT is getting ready and has set aside about $23 million for these 6 projects. A little bit that I can share with you is that their DOT is intending to add 1 lane in each direction on Air Cargo Road. So that's this little bit right here. And the same here on this section of Tampa Bay Boulevard, as well as adding a signal at Dale Mabry and Steinbrenner. So those are some details that have been fleshed out with the remainder, just trying to keep up with this fast moving project. And those are all planned for construction in the next fiscal year. Some other projects within the city of Tampa that are going to go to construction are some intersection improvements at Annie Street and 30th. 2 rigid pavement reconstruction projects, so not doing asphalt, but doing concrete to make sure that just gives it a longer useful life at Adamo Drive and 34th Street. And then a repaving of Hillsborough, which we talked about earlier, but this segment is from Park Road to Central Avenue within the city of Tampa. As well as some small traffic operations improvements at Kennedy Boulevard and Plant Avenue near the University of Tampa. Now looking out to unincorporated Hillsborough County, DOT has many projects there. A repaving of MLK from Gallagher Road to Oak Brook Lane out in the East County, as well as a repaving of US 92 near Thonotosassa. Mentioned the I-4 auxiliary. Oh, I did. So there's the I-4 express lanes, but then DOT is also advancing an auxiliary lane project on I-4 westbound from Bethlehem to Branch Forbes. So that'll be on, not on the shoulder, but the outer portion to have about a mile of an auxiliary lane constructed. And then finally, some intersection and improvements in sidewalks at State Route 60 and US 301. A couple other projects in unincorporated, both intersection improvements, one at Mango Road at Old Hillsborough Avenue, and then in South County, State Route 674 at College Avenue. Some intersection improvements coming there with the new Moffitt facility. And looking to our friends out east in Plant City, they will get to break ground this year on some sidewalks near their schools, near the fabulous Strawberry Festival, both some new sidewalks near Marshall Middle and Tomlin Middle. So as I mentioned, this is a long process. We're starting these committee presentations now. We're going to have the tip uploaded to the website later this afternoon to give at least 30 days for the public to review. We're trying some new things out with our public engagement with postcards, targeted social media ads, and other methods to make people aware of these investments that are coming down the line, and shooting for a June 10th adoption of the tip. Happy to answer any questions you may have on the projects or programming or process.
And for me, do you have any questions or comments? Oh, yes, Jay.
I think it's probably too early for this with the Ray Stadium, but any additional conversation on the I-275 trail and improvements for that trail, or the fact that at one time DOT had talked about a pedestrian overpass for Dale Mabry at I-275 for the trail. I don't know if that is still anything that they are looking in their work plan, but seems to make sense.
Definitely. And I'll ask DOT, but my understanding of that project is it's tied up with one of their TDNEC Section 5. So that's still part of the plan, but that section remains unfunded. So I don't believe that it will be bundled with the raise improvements, but I'll ask offline and confirm.
Thanks. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, I think that does it. Thank you, Elizabeth. All right, that was the last scheduled item. Any old or new business? I promise you it's the last time I'll mention it. Our Clean Air Fair is this Thursday, 2 blocks down. I just came from there. So everything is, weather looks good. So going forward, we welcome you to come. We'll be serving up food samples. So you get there early, you get a free plant. Just come say hello. So with that, no other questions, comments, new business, old business. I think we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.